Hello, hello. Welcome to Prowess Live. Happy Wednesday. We're here to be talking about something that we feel very passionate about when it comes for OBMs is pricing and what all it's going to take to make sure your price is what you want it to be, one that serves you, and that wraps in all of that value and all of you, everything that you want your business to be. So, to kick things off, to put this in a little bit of perspective, we wanted to know what is one brand that you will purchase because you are a believer in how they support their community or something, how the way in which they give back to the world. So, what is one of those products that you're like, this is why I buy this one versus something else? Or if you see you see it, you immediately click. I know here in Austin, we have a couple restaurants that are always giving back to the community, and they're doing a ton right now with everything that's going on. And that's why I pull into their drive-through because I know that that's what they do. So we'll be talking a lot about how we kind of put these concepts into our own businesses, because that's what we want to do. At the end of the day, OBMs love giving back themselves, and so how do you bring that all into your pricing and the value of your business? So before as you guys are dropping those in chat, I'm Leah Steinkirk, COO here at Prowess Project. What we do is we help people that are becoming online business managers, experts in ops, train them, help them build their business, and then match them up with CEOs and companies that need to find their right-hand person and ops leader. So I'm going to be joined by Natalie Schmerla on our team today, who also is amazing at this concept of helping OBMs really determine their prices. So I'm going to bring Natalie up. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello.
All right. So again, we're going to be diving into how to set your price and how to put purpose behind those numbers so that we feel very confident in them. And again, one of the reasons for me why I feel so strongly about this topic and why I'm excited to go back and forth with Natalie on this and pull out all of her wisdom is that all the OBMs that I talk to, this is what they tell me they want to do is they want to give back. They want to help people that have a great mission and value, and I want to help them amplify their voice. I want to help them make a bigger impact. And I always hear that as people are saying, when I ask them questions about, okay, how are we going to set your pricing? And I ask them what they want to be doing, those are the things that bubble up first. So we want to make sure that we're doing all of that in a way that feels good to us. So no resentment creeps in if we're charging too low and we can't give back or we don't feel like we're being rewarded for that. So we're going to be doing a lot of reverse engineering today. Natalie, anything come to mind for you when it comes to like setting your prices, your aha moments?
Lots. So we'll definitely get into that a little bit more here. I am just coming off a week of strategy. I basically sequestered myself in a way that I could focus on nothing but my business, and this was a huge topic of conversation. And we will definitely talk about my desire to give back and that kind of stuff, and that definitely was an element of the conversation that we had last week. And so I truly believe that when OBMs get into business, they are very much focused on what they are doing for others, and they don't necessarily stop to think about, okay, but how is this also benefiting me? And that's where you have to switch to your CEO hat, from just being an online business manager, because of the value that you are adding to others' businesses as well.
Absolutely. And so I think that's great. And I love how I know that we're going to hit a lot of this. But first, like we're gonna dive through five different tips that are mistakes that we see people, and it's not really mistakes. It's more like they're not taking it into perspective and building this. We kind of want to rush to that purpose and giving back part. But first, we're going to talk about understanding the impact of imposter syndrome when it comes to setting those prices. Then we're going to talk about math avoidance. We got to make sure everything is in there in order to get to that end result of what those price packages look like. We're going to talk about understanding our own capacity in order to get to those numbers. And then scheduling time, like Natalie just talked about in her strategic meeting, was scheduling time for that reflection and adjustment when it comes to setting prices. And then also, lastly, we'll talk about building in that profit and like the purpose behind those numbers. And first, setting the table before we dive into these five different areas is when it comes to pricing, what we're talking about, if you're just getting started, what we're talking about really is like either this is what you're putting out on the, maybe you put it on your website. You say, this is my initial package, this is, my retainer, and this is more of a robust package to work with me, more customized. Anything that's and as an OBM, you are setting out how someone works with you, what goes into that. And at the end of the day, it's a mathematical equation of how much they're going to be paying you for your time and your value. And so this may look like for you that you have something that is a project based, then you have a retainer, then you have customized. And maybe that you like to do all projects, right? And so it's how you set the prices for your projects. Maybe you have something very specific that you do for people and you just have a project. And if you need X amount more hours, you add that on. So however that looks, we're going to be talking about the things that need to go behind the scenes in order to make those numbers work both for your client and be enticing, but also for you so that you are building the business that you desire. Is that fair? Anything to add there, Natalie?
No, I love this. And I'm excited to hear also from anyone that is watching as well. Tell us what your challenges are. Tell us what questions are coming up in your mind as we kind of talk through some of these, I would call them roadblocks, maybe not mistakes, but kind of the roadblocks that both Leah and I have experienced as we've built our own online businesses as well. So yeah, let's dive in.
Right. Well, the first one on the table is the one that I think is that first deep breath that we have to take. And it's the imposter syndrome that comes in to setting your numbers. And really, for me, this is summing it up is it's almost like we're afraid to put a number out there. Like, ooh, that feels really big. Or that feels like if you're doing an hourly rate, that feels like, oh gosh, we feel guilty for throwing that number out there. And that's why we're going to talk about some of the math stuff. There's all different ways that you can break it apart to mathematically get rid of the imposter syndrome. But first off, what I want to say to people is that yes, what you deserve the number that you're putting out there and probably double it, right? It is we're OBMs, I see, are very guilty of being a group that is undervaluing. They're trying to make something economical. They're trying to make something that's not going to give everyone sticker shock. But the value of all of your past experience, all of the projects that you've done in the past where you've worked that patchwork quilt, I mean, you can't really put a price tag on it. When you are a Swiss Army knife, there is just a ton of value there, and you have to own it. You have to keep telling yourself that you deserve this number that you're charging. And it's almost like I want people to come up with it, add more on top of it, and then add more on top of it, and then put it out there and believe in it, right? And don't second guess it. I know it's hard to do, but we can get so in our heads about that number that we're putting out there.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Leah, I think the imposter syndrome definitely creeps in when you're doing it the first time. What I used as a tip or a trick for myself was I took my corporate salary, right? Because I came from 25 years of corporate. And I took my corporate salary. And mind you, at that point in time, I was at a director level. At whatever level you're at, take that salary that you would make in your corporate experience or in your previous experience. Divide that by 2080. At a minimum, that 2080 2080 hours is a full-time employee if you were working full-time, for an entire year. Divide that by 2080. When you do that, first of all, the number is probably going to shock you. And then to your point, add tax, right? So it's like take that number and multiply it a factor of however much. And we'll get into the math here in just a second, but that was really kind of the starting point for me where it was like, okay, that is realistic in a full-time experience. Now, granted, you're not obviously going to have all of your clients for a full-time scenario. We talked about projects, we talked about, retainers, but at a starting point, that's where you want to get started. If you don't have that kind of corporate experience, go out to Glassdoor or Indeed or any of those resources that are out there and available to you. Google, business manager or project manager or something. And you can get a lot more specificity depending on what your role is. But when you see the number on the screen, your imposter syndrome is going to go away. At least it did for me, because it was like, oh, I'm not even asking half of that. I'm not even asking a quarter of that, right? So dealing with that imposter syndrome, we talk a lot about, removing those limiting beliefs, but that is definitely the starting point that I would say every online business manager really needs to go through as they are getting started with pricing their packages.
Yes. And one thing that I like to encourage people to do, Natalie, like as you're talking about this, and there's so much, like what I'm hearing though is that experience, right? Like all of
Yeah.
this stuff that's coming, and you're afraid to put this number out there. But let's think like 6 months down the road when you've already gotten that client, you get, yes, this is what I should be charging. They happily wrote that check for the first retainer. Um, it was paid, it's in your bank account, and you're like already feeling confident. That's how we need to show up at for that first conversation, right? That they've already said yes.
Yes.
Have that confidence. Tell yourself that's the version of me that's putting this number out there. Because as OBMs, we will rethink it. We will think, oh, maybe I'll make it a little bit less because it's my first client, or I haven't done all of this before. No, come up with a number after we go through the math and put it out there, and
Yeah.
then just own it. Yes, you will customize things for people. Yes, there will be different case scenarios, but have your set prices.
Mhm.
And there's a comment here, which I think is so important, is you're going to think you shouldn't be charging that number. The syndrome is creeping in because it's easy for you. It's fun for you. But all the value, all the learning that it took, all the research that you've done before on these systems, or all that it took to put into that CRM, that is what this person is paying for.
Yeah.
They're not paying for the time that you physically sit to create that automation super fast and make it fun. What they're paying for is all of that knowledge that you had, all of those years of learning team communications, building up those EQ skills. That is what we're putting into this. So when you look at all this, like it's like the muscle that you've built,
Yeah.
there should be no imposter syndrome because you've put in all that time, energy, all of that.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's get into the math, Natalie.
Yes.
Um, I'll kick this off by, well, I want to extend on like what you were talking about. So, for anybody out there with their paper and their pens, usually where we will start is what is that goal? If we
Yeah.
think about it in yearly salary or that yearly goal that you want to make. And then that should include, because you're a 1099 employee by yourself, you need to have that number support anything you need for your own benefits. So if that's insurance you have to cover, you have to have it in there for taxes. So this number is going to get big, which is fine. And then we divide that by 2080. That's if you were working as 40 hours a week for 52 weeks. If you want to say, no, I only want to work 30, then adjust that number, right?
Yeah.
But do that division and come up with that number. And typically for an OBM, you're going to be between probably 50 and 100. And that's fine, right? Because we look at when it comes up where it's $85 an hour, gulp. But yes, that is the number, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one easy way to do it. But we also want to make sure that in that number that we're setting out there, it's what you want to be bringing home, your profit. But we need to make sure that you also have taxes in there. And usually we say about 30% is a safe place to be for taxes.
Yeah.
And then for your own expenses, now typically, like for most small businesses, personally owned, you would say about 30% for your own internal business. OBMs, I don't think it's that high, right?
Okay.
So maybe it's going to be 20 to 10%, and
Mhm.
then the rest can be your take home. So
Yeah.
that's what you want to kind of see in those equations. Come up with that number, make sure that take home number is what you want it to be. If not, then we're going back and have a bigger number that we're dividing by that 2080.
Yes.
Anything else, Natalie, that you kind of make sure you have in there?
I think from a mathematical perspective, one exercise that was super valuable to me as I was setting my revenue goals is, rather than looking at what does an online business manager typically bring home or charge, I Googled what does a CEO in Omaha, Nebraska make.
Smart.
And again, you can go down from there, right? So I'm not going to be the CEO at Mutual of Omaha or insert other Fortune 500 company here. But what does a CEO of a small business make? Again, going back to that imposter syndrome, when I look at that number, it is validating for me and understanding that that is not something that's so out of left field for me to ask for my clients to pay for. Now, that also helped me assess and understand where then I needed to focus my ideal clients and my ideal market to target. Because if I was setting my revenue goal at X, I needed to make sure that my businesses could afford to pay me for meeting that goal. So I think that was another tool that was useful as I was doing the backwards math. I was also going to just add in your comments about expenses. What we always talk about at Prowess is starting small. So don't feel like you have to have all the bells and whistles to go in. I am, getting ready to enter year 3. Now I can add some sparkle and some bells and whistles into the things that I am doing. But in the beginning, it was, bare bones, all of the things that I could get for free, leveraging what I already had to get started to keep that expense number lower.
Mhm. You know what I love that you said, Natalie, is when you're talking about how you validated your number, like you went to what feels comfortable to you,
Yeah.
which was the research and what's the market equivalent in your area. And that's
Typical
such a great,
OBM, right?
right. But what I encourage other OBMs to do, because I'm thinking about like, what's mine? Like, how do I
Mm.
justify mine? Um, and I think you're right. I think I would look at what other like adjacent either industry or comparable would charge for a similar project. That
Hmm.
would make me feel more comfortable. But whatever that is, right? So for some people, it's the number that they were making before. And then
Yeah,
they do the math and they're like, that gets me close enough. I'm good. But going outside of that as to what are other people making, what other industries, that's a great example too. Some people I've heard it as like you take all the things that you want to be doing in your life, your travel, your other financial goals. Maybe it's very relevant now as paying for college tuition for me.
yes, yes.
Um, put those things in there and then divide that number. And if that's
Yeah,
what's comfortable to you, right? And maybe it comes out either a lot higher or a lot lower than if you were to do the Glassdoor thing. That's fine. It's what feels good to you. Because I always say if you're confident in that number, then you're gonna have no problem putting it out there.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, just from a personal experience, as I started out my business, again, I was very focused on, well, what do I have to make to keep my lifestyle in the same state that it was in, to pay my mortgage, to pay my bills, to do those things, to pay college tuition, as we both are experiencing, whatever that looks like. That is what was super important to me. And again, 2.5 years into my business, as I'm entering my third year, it's a different number than where I was when I got started. And so we'll talk about why that's important, but um, things vary. So it is not a one and done, certainly by any means. But expenses are a little higher this year than they were last year. Maybe your projects are more extensive, so you're getting a little more revenue this year rather than last year. But yes, definitely having that baseline, here's my revenue goal, to do, like you said, meet the same space that I was in previous to starting my business. To achieve a goal that maybe I've never been able to achieve before. Keeping all of that in mind, and then benefits or any retirement elements also need to be kept into consideration. You're not working for a company who is matching your 401k or investing. So maybe you need to think about that SEP IRA differently than you did before. It's also a tax Um, uh, it benefits you from a tax perspective. So think about that. And Uncle Sam. You cannot forget Uncle Sam as a business owner. So certainly, while we are talking about all of these things, please be sure also to confer with your local CPA or financial advisor as we're talking through this as well.
Yes, yes. One other thing I want to throw into this section before we move on is because the thought of like AI is coming up for me right now, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of creative things that you can do for offering packages. Um, but then as OBMs, we think, okay, but I've never either I don't know what I haven't done it before, or that's going to take me research.
yeah,
And what I want to say is that's okay. You do not have to adjust your prices down because it is something you haven't done before.
yeah,
You do not have to, I mean, I always tell people to be transparent in how long something will take you to do as far as learning something new or research, but we don't discount our prices because as OBMs, again, going back to your value, you are quick learners, you do things fast, you know how to research, you know how to implement quickly. All of that other stuff will kick in and balance out when it's something new. So that is again all part of the value of your past experience and the way that you were designed is a lead in operations.
100% agree.
So now let's chat about the adjusting of prices. And Natalie, I feel like you were just in this experience of looking like we need to make sure that we go back once we set them
Mhm.
and adjust our prices and schedule that on our calendar.
Yes. So again, we kind of threw out there that number of 2,080 hours, right? That is full time if you were working, 8 to 5, 9 to 5, whatever that looks like, right? But there's also this element of you starting your business because of other desires. You want flexibility, you want the freedom to be able to do the things that you want to do. So there's a capacity that you need
Yes.
to consider as you are thinking through this backwards math. How much time are you also spending on your business or in your business? It's not a paying client. So you need to consider that those are not billable hours. So you need to consider that and include that, if you will, in that rate that you are charging a client. So that is another element of it. Plus, you also need to think through what that looks like as you are laying out your calendar for the week. If you have a revenue goal and you think it's going to take you 4 clients to be able to do that, there's only 7 days in a week, 24 hours in a day, making sure that you are not getting stuck in this overworked rat race, the cycle that a lot of us get into. We can do things faster with systems and operations and workflows and automation. So really being cognizant of what that capacity looks like, energy wise, hours wise. How long do you want to be sitting at your desk in front of a computer screen? Are there different ways that you can go about getting things done in that capacity that allows you to charge a higher rate, work less hours? Really consider how that kind of all balances out, because at the end of the day, a deposit in a bank account doesn't necessarily always fulfill all of the things that we as whole human beings also need to fulfill. So that is another component. You have your imposter syndrome that you need to, work through as you're setting the rate. You got to do the backwards math. And you also got to think about the energy that you're putting into each of these clients each and every day as well.
And what about like the flip side of that capacity now? Like there may be times as an OBM that you have a high rate for
Yeah.
that knowledge that you are going to be leading. Maybe it's a project that you're leading or you're working with a certain, sometimes when you work with corporate companies, there is a higher rate than maybe if you took a small company.
Yeah.
And so that capacity, you actually aren't, you feel like you're not putting in as much
Mm-hmm.
to fill that, but it fills what they need. But you're thinking, but I do all of this other stuff for other clients.
Yeah.
Has that ever happened to you where you're like, I don't know if I can, you almost want to give people I've been there. I want to give someone a discount because that
Yeah.
doesn't take. as much time as they thought it would, or however that's working, but that's going to happen and that's okay.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, Leah is calling me out live here on this live stream. We just
I
had this
didn't say
conversation
that.
this morning. No, but you're absolutely right. I mean, there are going to be those scenarios where, again, depending on the work that I'm doing for a given client, I may think it's easy or it is less energy that I'm spending on them, but it's not ideal. It's not fun. I can't remember who made the comment earlier, but the value when it's fun to do, I might be, it's less fun work, but it's, again, the 25 years of corporate experience that I'm bringing to the table. It is my ability to do it bigger, better, faster, stronger. There's a reason that they have hired me to do this when they're not assigning that project or that work to an internal employee. That is okay to have that higher rate. Don't discount yourself. Don't discount the value you're adding. Don't discount the work that you're doing as something less than or other, because it is not. You are bringing high value to those clients. They wouldn't have hired you otherwise.
Yes. So for this goes back to that imposter syndrome. It
Yeah.
goes into the math, it goes into this capacity, is it doesn't always have to feel like a struggle to charge that price that you know you deserve. Right.
Yeah.
So if we're feeling like, oh gosh, this really needs to feel hard to justify this number, that's when we probably need to go back and do a little more mindset work and tell
Yeah.
ourselves, no, we deserve this number. This is what I want to put out, again. And if these numbers feel slightly uncomfortable when we do the math and we figure it out, as an OBM, you're really good at research. You're really good at A/B testing. Have those conversations with friendly people that own a business and say, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And take their feedback if that's what you want. If you don't want to go talk to people about it, this is where you use your friend ChatGPT and have those conversations with it and have it say, like, if I wanted to charge this number to do this kind of project, what kind of skills do you think I should have? And I bet you even that conversation with chat, you're going to realize that you're blowing it out of the water when it comes to skills. If
Yeah.
there's one area you want to perfect, go do it. But we need to, I guarantee most people on this listening to this are undercharging as
Yeah.
OBMs. Like, we really need to step into that.
100%. Another quick note, and I would love to be able to attribute this to the individual, and the name is escaping me, but essentially the point that they were making is, if you are undercharging or undervaluing yourself, when you get to the point where you have so many people that are coming to you, part of the reason that they might be coming to you, or part of the reason why you might have a backlog, is because you are undervaluing your work. You are charging less than others and delivering a fantastic product in what it is. So I always remember that when you have a backlog, reevaluate your pricing. Make sure that it is in line with whatever it is that you have set out as the criteria for yourself. Fun, valuable, mission focused, it meets your revenue goals, it pays your bills, it takes care of taxes or benefits or whatever the case might be. But certainly when you get to that point where you are having to, push clients out a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, whatever it looks like, that's also a good sign to do a reevaluation of your pricing.
Yes, yes. And so let's dive into that one because that was number 4 on our list, was that reevaluating. Um, this is something, I mean, quarterly, you should be looking at it. And again, as OBMs, you track metrics for everybody else.
Right.
Make sure you're tracking your own metrics. And what I mean by that is every email that you get that says, "Oh my gosh, you just saved me a ton of time. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Thanks for doing this for me." We save up those mini testimonials, right? That's a data point. When we look at how much our clients' revenue numbers have increased, or whatever that what is that their internal metrics that we're helping with, we take a look at those. And then take a look at your own impact, right? And that might be the softer skills, but the stuff of how many of your clients went on vacation and you were helping manage things. How many people were able to launch a new product or go into their own passion project? What are those other things? And bringing all of that together quarterly when we look at it, that's when you say, okay, like, let me increase this, right? And you may increase in your retainer hour, or it could be just for a certain type of project that you realize I'm really helping people move through these quickly,
Mhm.
right? We're not talking about you don't have to go and change everything every quarter, but make sure you're looking at that and evaluating your own return on investments with your client and make sure that's matching what you're charging.
What is also so key in there that you said, Leah, is the soft stuff. We are data focused. We are looking for the specifics. We are looking for those metrics and KPIs. But to your point, when your client was able to go hang with their children at the pool because it's summertime and they didn't have to be in front of the screen all day, every day. That is ROI that you have delivered, and you should add that to your value and pricing. The vacations are huge, especially right now, summertime. People on vacation all the time. Business owners having confidence and trust in you to be able to walk away for that time frame and know their business is still ongoing. Huge benefit. And again, think about what benefit that is providing them, or that return that they are getting, and include that in your hourly rate. The other big one that really kind of lends in here is the work that they're not doing because you are doing it for them. So if you have a client that you are working for who was managing all of these things previous to your engagement, they're no longer doing that now. So what are they able to do? They're new product launches. They are writing a book. They are able to do group coaching because they have more bandwidth. They are or one-on-one coaching because they have more bandwidth. Those are the things that you kind of have to make sure that you're also considering as you're looking at the value you're delivering and the rate that you're setting for each of your clients.
Yep. So this is when we talk a lot about, well, Natalie, I feel like coined the phrase here of being the CEO in your own business.
Yeah.
Make sure you're putting this on your calendar, that
Yes.
set a meeting for, at least every quarter, that you're at least going to look at it. Before you start evaluating the numbers and doing the math, go look at all of the positive ROI that you have, and then go into that meeting with yourself. So,
Yes. And in there, think about the things that we've talked about. Is your goal being met? Is your energy level where you want it to be? Are you loving it, or are there things that are pulling you? We call them energy suckers, or energy vampires that are like draining you in some way. Like, make sure that you are looking for those too as you are reevaluating where you're sitting, what you want to charge your clients as well.
and now this is not in our outline for today, but the one thing that I wish I would do better when it comes to this kind of work is be really disciplined at the end of the day, gathering these things up. Like at the end of the day, reflecting, like, did I save anyone time? Did I, you know what I mean? Whatever those things are, because I know once a week in our team meetings, we'll be like, all right, what are the bright spots for last week? Nobody remembers.
Yeah.
Like things go by so fast that we
Yes.
don't, it's hard. So if you're like, oh yeah, once a quarter, I'm going to look at this, it's too hard. So if to be really disciplined of just jotting a note down or making that note in your Google Calendar or whatever it is once a day to be like, what were, like you're saying, what are the uplifting things that I did so
Mhm.
that we can gather that data?
Yeah. Those gratitude journals come in real handy in these scenarios. What is one thing that you are grateful for today? You can, make that a personal and a professional thing. And
Yep.
and it takes 5 seconds just to jot it down, voice memo, what have you, and then you have that as a reference point in the future.
Yep. Absolutely. Um, okay. So we talked about on our list, we talked about imposter syndrome and how we're going to make sure we're eliminating that when we go into these pricing conversations with ourselves, how to do the math and reverse engineer that, understanding our capacity and making sure that's in alignment with our prices, scheduling time on our calendar for reflections. And then lastly, we are going to dive into, and this is my favorite part of it, is building in both profit and purpose into this number that we're putting out into the world.
Yes.
Nellie, do you want to share some insight again because just came off this retreat?
Yes, absolutely. So, a couple of things that were super important to me as I was starting my business was being able to do this in a way where I could also continue to give back. I was very fortunate in my last corporate job that it was a company that did very frequent and recurring volunteer weeks, and you had paid time off for being able to volunteer, and it's always been kind of just ingrained in me. So as I looked at my business and I was looking at my capacity, I have had a pro bono client or a fulfillment client, somebody that fills my cup personally. It still gives me professional experience that I can reference on my resume, my testimonials, my portfolio, what have you. But it is a way that I can fill that need and desire in my business. So it has been everything from doing resume reviews for prison reentry program, and again, I'm still professionally developing others. I am still helping individuals find ways to re-enter society and do better. So that was something that was super important to me. I have mentored college kids who are going through school and trying to figure out what the heck it is that they want to do. And, they're starting their little TikTok shops. I'm not going to say little. That was very not cool of me, because some of these individuals are making significant amounts of money in these businesses. But they are starting a TikTok shop. It starts out as something very small, and then they're like, holy crap, I've gone viral. I don't know what to do. And they need all the same systems and back end support that, some of these larger businesses need. I have helped election campaigns. So my point here is that as I have looked at my rate, my pricing, all of that, this was important to me to not just have the capacity in my schedule, but also ensure that it was going to be helpful and fulfilling for my business. And I think that that is also important, that as you all are setting your pricing, whether it is going after mission focused businesses, like we talked about at the very beginning of the business, and you want to work with companies that are giving back, or if you want to identify ways that your business can also give back, you got to include that as part of your value and your pricing. You are learning and using your skills in those ways just as you would for a paying client. And so it is as valuable as working for, insert Acme Corporation here. So that is definitely something that is near and dear to my heart. And as I was reflecting last week, I really am energized by those opportunities, but also it makes me feel good when I see that number, that I know that there's a portion of that that is also giving back to these entities and these companies as well.
Absolutely. And so, question for you, Natalie, is are you figuring that when you set your, like when you're reverse engineering your math and you're saying this is the amount, are you putting it in the dollar amount, or do you put it in your time capacity of I'm going to give X amount of time?
So I kind of do it in both ways, Leah. One, because it is going to take time away. So, if I am, I usually factor 24 to 36 hours a quarter. Because again, some of the things will be, 4 hours at the food bank. Some of them will be 4 hours sitting at the university. It just varies. So I do 24 to 36 hours a quarter in terms of time and capacity. And then I include that also as my hourly rate. And I kind of also look at it from a sense of like bad debt, like a rate I won't get paid. So then I can
Hmm.
adjust my hourly rate or my baseline packages to include that lift for those 24 hours, because I mean that's 3 days in a, what is that, 480-hour bucket of time. It really isn't a whole lot. So that's really kind of how I consider and evaluate that.
Well,
Great
I think,
question.
which I think is great because one, like especially with volunteer work, I always want to make sure that I in my capacity, because that so if you try and schedule it outside of what you know it's that's you're adding on a layer of stress that you don't need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Build it into your capacity. That's why you run your own business. You can do these things. And then if also, yeah, if it isn't, there's gonna be a financial part of it, then you're planning for that. And I really like how you said it. Like it feels good when you look at those numbers at the end of the day, because I think with being helping someone with operations, especially if you want to support a company that has a big goal or a big mission, you have to conserve your own energy, but also that you want to protect from any resentment that can come in. If we're not meeting our own goals or if we feel like we're giving back too much, there's a certain amount of erosion that can happen there. And then that's where we sit and be like, okay, what am I doing? So we want to plan for all of that. And again, in that reverse engineering, as what are all the things that I want to put into this? And now, how am I going to set up my pricing to support that?
Yeah. The other thing you have to consider in this is passion can be, again, nonprofit, charitable, giving back in that way. But how are you also giving back to yourself?
Oh,
What are
great
you
point.
doing? What are you doing to continue enhancing your knowledge base? Reaching outside of your comfort zone? Are there conferences that you want to attend? Include that. Include the cost, include the time. Um, are there other classes, or are you participating in a mastermind or something of that nature as well? Those are all important elements of setting your packaging and your pricing to make sure that you are accounting for that time professionally, because the last thing that you want to do, I agree with you, Ken, never stop learning. It's only going to make you more valuable. It's only going to make that rate even more, you know um applicable as you continue to network, enhance your skills, learn something different, whatever the case might be. You certainly want to keep that into consideration.
Yes. And this is all things that looking at those numbers, like I love goal planning at the beginning of the year. So if you're looking at like what do I want to add something new and I'm going to need to learn that, like we're gathering up all of those prices. What's it going to take to if I want to take a new course, if I want to get a different kind of certification, if I want to join this networking group, even if it's like something that like you're giving it back, what are all those price points that becomes part of that business expense, whether that's at 10 or 20% that you're building in there. And then when again, as OBMs, when we know that we've projected it, we're thinking about it or come back and adjust it, it works because we know how
Mhm.
to master the spreadsheet. We know how to keep track of all these things. But don't ever be afraid to put that into these numbers, or know that the number that you're charging your customer also is part of your further development. There's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kind of a cool full circle experience, too, is to think about, a local conference or a local event that you are attending that has helped you or brought you to the level that you want to be. How can you give back in that way? Maybe there is, a flyer you can include in the swag bags next time and offer, a free intro session to talk about your tech stack. Or what are ways that you can come back full circle in business that's just already happening for you? It's another discovery call, it's another lead opportunity, it's another networking scenario. But I think that oftentimes we don't think about, circling back in ways that are going to, again, help you increase that rate or the value that you're offering to your clients.
Yes. This has been great, Natalie. You have so much wisdom when it comes to this.
Oh gosh. Well, thank you. I learned it by watching you, my friend.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I am going to drop the link to our revenue calculator. If you
Yes.
guys need something, this is a spreadsheet you guys can use again to kind of reverse engineer that math. Um, I like what Ken said about having different scenarios. Dream big. Have one that's your ideal. Have one that you're like, this is where I'm starting right now. Um, and if you need, I mean, we're always here to hop on calls if you guys want to chat through those things. So thank you everyone. I think we have a guest with us next week, and we'll see everyone next Wednesday.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah.